I had the diagnosis that I was going to be in a wheelchair at some point. The day came when I said, no, that's not my destiny. That is not my destiny. And I took control of my health. I made conscious decisions to take certain supplements to improve my health. I became very conscious about what I ate. And exercise, a systematic approach to exercise became extremely important. Sometimes it takes motivation. Sometimes it takes a health scare or something to cause someone to make drastic changes to their lifestyle. But that motivation will only take you so far. And after that, it takes discipline. And for me, that became my approach to my daily life.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Walk with Wisdom. I'm Genevieve Wisdom. And remember, this is a lifestyle show on youthful aging. And today, we have the amazing Michelle Troll here. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us on Walk with Wisdom today.
Thank you, Genevieve. I'm so honored to actually be here and be a part of this with you.
Fantastic. Now, everyone, I am going to read Michelle's bio, and this is just really still a tip of the iceberg of the woman that you are. But it's really going to give our audience just a taste as to what we're talking about today, which is you as far as wellness, nutrition, iron, all those things go. So here we go, ladies. So today on Walk with Wisdom, I have the honor of welcoming Michelle Troll. She's a true force in the world of health and fitness. At 60 years old, yes, at 60 years old, Michelle looks and lives with the vitality of someone half her age. She's not only a champion athlete and coach, but also a devoted mother and grandmother, proud grandmother, I should add, proving that strength, beauty, and youthful aging are possible at any stage of life. With over 2 decades of experience as a national level figure competitor and personal trainer, Michelle has dedicated her career to helping men and women transform their health. She coaches clients across generations, from younger women, ages 18 to 40, to women navigating perimenopause and menopause, offering in-person coaching and online nutrition and training programs that empower lasting change. Her story is nothing short of extraordinary. After being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, in her early 20s, Michelle faced years of relapses, disability, and uncertainty. But instead of giving up, she turned to fitness, nutrition, and nutraceuticals as her medicine. Through discipline, research, and relentless perseverance, she not only rebuilt her strength and confidence, but ultimately defied the odds. Today, over 15 years since her last relapse, she's living proof that the body can heal, adapt, and thrive when given the right conditions, including targeted supplements like iron, which she now emphasizes for her clients to optimize energy and wellness. Michelle, kudos on healing you.
Thank you, Genevieve.
You're very welcome. I just had to interject there because that is nothing short of a miracle, and we'll talk more about that. We go on. Beyond her coaching career, Michelle is also a decorated figure champion. Over the course of her competitive journey, she's captured multiple first-place titles across the U.S., including the Oregon State Championships, Washington State Championships, California Excalibur, and Canadian Nationals. Wow. She consistently placed among the best at prestigious national level competitions such as the Junior USA Nationals, Junior Nationals, and North American Nationals. These victories not only established her as a champion, but as a living example of what discipline, mindset, and perseverance can achieve. Michelle has coached everyone from elite athletes to everyday individuals looking to reclaim their health, supporting weight loss, injury recovery, hormone balance, and mindset shifts that last a lifetime. She has emphasized nutrition, strength training, and the essential role of nutrients like iron and other nutraceuticals, particularly for women of all ages, to support energy, vitality, and overall wellness. For her, fitness is more than aesthetics. It's about creating sustainable habits, improving mental health, and proving that limitations can be overcome. What inspires me most is Michelle's passion. She believes that exercise, nutrition, and supplementation isn't a quick fix. It's a lifestyle, and when people fall in love with how movement makes them feel, they unlock the possibility of lifelong vitality. She's truly a living example of resilience, discipline, and hope. Michelle, thank you for joining us. I am just going to go right into the questions.
Okay.
Michelle, your story is truly inspiring. You share how your early experiences, including MS diagnosis, shaped your approach to health. How does it shape your approach to health today?
Excellent question. And first of all, thank you so much, Genevieve, for such a wonderful introduction.
Yes, Michelle.
I'm inspired.
Oh, amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing.
To your question, first of all, I was diagnosed at the age of 28, but I had some symptoms, obviously, for a couple of years leading up to the diagnosis. And over the course of the next several years, I went through many what was called relapsing, remitting phases. And during the relapses, there were times of being completely bedridden. During the remission phases, I still suffered a lot of symptoms, predominantly something like chronic fatigue, numbness, difficulty walking. It affected my vision. And as a result, I also suffered a lot of muscle loss. And so it became a point that I needed to essentially fight back. And I couldn't let this disease overtake me completely as it was doing. And at one point, my doctors had a very frank conversation with me, and she said, "You have to start fighting this disease, Michelle. Right. You need to go to the gym. You need to start working out." Right. Now, prior to my diagnosis, I'd always been working out, going to the gym and things, but over the years, it became pretty much impossible due to the relapses that I suffered and just due to the ongoing symptoms. So it took a lot of strength, and that strength came from the motivation of wanting to be there for my daughter when she grew up, and the strength came from my faith. It took just basically step by step. And so when I think how it really shapes me today is realizing that sometimes it takes motivation, sometimes it takes a health scare or something to cause someone to make drastic changes to their lifestyle. But that motivation will only take you so far. And after that, it takes discipline. And for me, that became my approach to my daily life. And initially, those workouts started off being 5 minutes in the gym, and I had to remind myself that was my starting place.
Right.
That it didn't matter what I did before I came into the gym or the years before, how strong I was or how fit I might have been. This is where I was starting now. And the fact that I was there was something. And so each day that I went, I did what I could.
Course.
And that's what I encourage everyone. That's my health approach today now too, is to do what you can. So if all you can do is get up out of your chair, get up and get out of your chair. If all you can do is go for a walk, go for a walk. But progressively from there, you're going to see improvements. And so my approach with my health today is do not take your health for granted. None of us is assured that we're going to have good health. And at the age of 28, with the diagnosis of MS, I had never dreamed that was going to be, something that I was going to be dealing with.
Right.
And instead of taking that diagnosis and living with it as if that was my destiny, which initially I have to admit, I did feel quite overwhelmed by it.
Of course.
And probably succumbed to that feeling that this is it. And, I had the diagnosis that I was going to be in a wheelchair at some point. But at one point, finally, the day came when I said, no, that's not my destiny. That is not my destiny. And I took control of my health. I made conscious decisions to take certain supplements to improve my health. I became very conscious about what I ate and what I did not eat.
Yes, of course.
It was just as important because there's a lot of food out there that, we should not be consuming.
Of course.
And exercise, a systematic approach to exercise became extremely important. In addition to that, rest. We don't want to underestimate how important rest is. Decreasing stress. So look at the stresses in your life and see where can you eliminate or at least try to decrease those stresses, because that is, I think most of us today we have a lot of stress in our life, and that can be a number one killer for people or add to your issues, especially if you have an autoimmune disease. And then your mindset, really is everything. Your mindset, get up and, don't sit there and delay, like, tomorrow I'm going to have the time to start this. You don't know you're going to have tomorrow. And don't you want to be the best you can be today?
Love that.
So that's my general approach to, how I changed from where I was at to where I am today. And where I was at, I think people look at me today and it's a hard thing to believe.
Yes.
That I was at times completely bedridden. Yes. I was hospitalized. There were times I could not walk. I required a wheelchair and to be pushed around. So it's hard to look at me today and think that I was ever like that. But it's taken a lot of hard work,
of course,
a lot of perseverance, consistency. And even if something happened and I had a relapse, a bad relapse, as soon as I could, I got back up and started doing what I could. And I realized that as long as you're willing to get up and do what you can, there's like no shame in starting over.
Of course.
Over and over again.
Of course.
And so I think that, we stop the comparison. What was I like before? What did I do before? Here you are today. Start today.
I love that. I love that, Michelle. Thank you so much for that. There are a few things you say that I know will resonate with our listening audience. By the way, ladies, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Walk with Wisdom. And of course, we will be sharing the links to Michelle's personal page for social media, etc. One of the things that I love that you've said that I know we've talked about on the show before, as women go through the different stages of life, is not to be afraid of redoing. I love rewords, restart, revisit, revive. I love do-overs and redos. So thank you for really being a woman that's come from there to where you are now and telling us girls, no matter what we go through our stages, and we are going to tie in, of course, iron through the stages because you've done many things with iron as well to really give you that health. But when we talk about supplementing with iron and when you have that energy, you know what? We're just going to jump right there, Michelle. I'm going to ask you a question about that. So, your MS diagnosis nudged you towards fitness as both a lifestyle and a form of healing, is what I heard, which is incredible. How did that journey expand to include nutrition, nutraceuticals, and if you can just talk about just your cognizance of iron, because that really helps us girls get the energy, and especially with you going through that, having to battle that energy. So again, to be specific, nutrition, nutraceuticals, iron. How did that help you go from there to where you are today, which is fabulous.
Thank you, Genevieve. Well, so nutrition, first of all, is, I would say, the number one component to anyone's good health. I would probably even put that just a little bit above exercise. But I mean, everything is important to like to take a holistic approach to healing our bodies and to maintaining vitality and longevity of life. So nutrition for me, one of the things that I had to do was increase my protein intake because I actually just did not understand the importance of protein or what my daily requirements were. So that was a huge component. And of course, with protein intake, that improves your ability to build muscle and to recover from exercise. So that was an important component there, as well as just consuming healthy fruits and vegetables, healthy starchy carbohydrates, and trying to eliminate, maybe not completely because I still love chocolate, but eliminating sugar. And actually, prior to my competition days, when I had to become extremely strict on my diet, which is actually what taught me a lot about nutrition, I would say I ate a chocolate bar every single day.
Right.
Because for me, actually, I didn't ever suffer with weight gain or anything like that. So it wasn't an issue, but I didn't realize what it was doing to me as well. It was not providing me with nutrition, and it was actually harmful to me, all that sugar every day.
Yes.
And in terms of the nutraceuticals, there became a point when I realized there were certain vitamins and supplementations that I could take that would improve my overall health, improve my immune system function, which is extremely important if you do suffer from any autoimmune disease, but even for everyone just in your daily life. You don't want to be getting sick and missing time from work, those kind of things. So I started to supplement with, like I said, a higher protein intake, creatine monohydrate, essential amino acids, things that would help me with my performance and recovery from my gym workouts.
Of course.
And then vitamin D3, that omega-3s. There are a number of vitamins that I found helpful. And with respect to iron, of course, one of the things is, especially for women, but I would even break that down further into groups of women, for example, endurance athletes. They tend to have to be more careful about their iron intake because they tend to suffer with lower iron. Vegan or vegetarian, not necessarily getting enough iron from their food sources. So that's another component there. Women with heavy menstrual periods. Now, that could be women of younger age, but I do find even women in the perimenopause and menopause stage often are overlooked because they're going into menopause. So no one's thinking about the fact that, well, they still are menstruating, sometimes much heavier and longer prolonged periods. So they're actually suffering a great deal of blood loss during that time. And that can deplete them of their iron stores. For me, on a personal level, I found that actually for someone actually with MS, it's quite interesting. We do have fluctuations with our ability to store and absorb iron. So that can be an issue. It is important to note, though, that you should always get your blood work checked and see where your iron levels are at. And, even if they don't come back in the sort of below anemic level, they might not be in the optimal level. So, and optimal in the sense that you could be symptomatic, but your iron levels aren't quite below enough where the doctor's saying that you require supplementation. But you also need to sort of look at, well, am I suffering symptoms that could be related to lower than optimal levels of iron, such as fatigue, inability to exercise or recover from exercise, shortness of breath. And when I was competing, due to the amount of training that I was doing and the level of training that I was at, and due to my diet, it had become quite strict to the point where I didn't realize I wasn't getting enough iron through my food sources. And so at the end of my first competition season, I started complaining of things like, again, just fatigue. I'd feel like I could hardly stand up from, get off the floor without being short of breath.
Right.
And I went to my doctor, and fortunately, she ran blood work. We discovered I was low iron. But quite often, if you have an autoimmune disease too, chronic fatigue and shortness, weakness, that kind of thing is just an ongoing symptom that you kind of get used to.
Right.
So you can often attribute it to that and not realize it's actually your iron levels are low.
Yeah.
And if I just address that, I'm actually going to feel significantly better with the supplementation. And sure enough, within a few weeks, I started to bounce back and feel better. And then my next competition season, I ensured that I actually had a lot of red meat in my diet. And that's not typical for competitors, but for me, it worked well. Yeah, it provided me with the iron in addition to supplementation that I needed in order to train at that level.
Right. Michelle, that's awesome. You see some just incredible catchphrases that we've talked about before. And ladies, please, what Michelle is saying ties into what we've talked about before. We talked about this to Dr. Leah. We talked about iron. We're going to have another incredible doctor on to talk about iron. And here we have an athlete extraordinaire, which we want to do that walk with wisdom. We want to have the cross section of us girls, the doctors, an incredible excellent athlete, but I wanted to actually talk to you about what you do on a daily basis for training, because for those ladies that are listening and we're looking at you, we're going, well, I'm not going to be an athlete like that. However, I need help, and you do training on a daily basis, don't you, Michelle? But before you answer that, what you said that was so important was that us ladies are in different groups. So you have the endurance athlete, and you have just us ladies that are tired or fatigued and we're not sure why. And one thing us girls do well is we white knuckle it. We just get through it.
Right.
We deal with it. This is or where we are. Yeah. And what you said, which is great, which is why I brought up, go back, by the way, ladies, and listen to the other podcasts around iron and the ones that are coming up, because we have to get our levels tested. And absolutely. We have to look at the whole woman, like you said. Yes. So you're here. I may be somewhere different with menopause and then perimenopause and then the young ladies with their menstrual cycle and then the pregnant ladies. There are all these different groups of ladies. So make sure you're working with your primary care practitioner. Get your levels checked. And from those levels, we can decide what you need. So going back to you, Michelle, I think it's just foundational. Like we have coaches in life, I think you're an exceptional coach to come alongside a woman. We're talking about girls primarily here, though men have iron needs as well. We'll talk about that on another show. Yes. Maybe you can come back for that, okay, Michelle.
Love to.
Yes, of course. But, just about us girls, the iron needs are different based on what group we're in. So if someone was supposed to come to you for nutrition and personal training, for you to come alongside them, be in their group, because I have a life coach, a business coach, and I have had personal trainers and nutrition coaches. Do you read the blood test? Do you read iron levels, or do you send the ladies to get their iron levels tested to make sure that at least that is a good foundation for you to work with?
I actually do. I do. I have all of my clients fill out quite a lengthy questionnaire prior to committing to training with me or me coaching them. And part of the requirements is that they have blood work done, unless they've recently had it done. So then we will review that together and possibly see if there's anything missing that I would think that they should go back to their physician and ask for additional blood work, depending on sort of, if they're coming to me with any complaints or health issues or things maybe that they just don't feel right, something's off and they know it. And so, because it could be everything from hormones to low iron, low levels of vitamin D, so yes, so I definitely require that all of my clients have their blood work checked prior to us working together. And then from there, we'll approach it and see what can we do to optimize their health through nutrition, through training, through nutraceuticals and other supplements, and just see what it is that they need. Because the blood work tells a lot. It's not the whole story, but it's definitely a component that I think should not be overlooked.
Of course. Thank you for that, Michelle. And that gives you a snapshot of where a woman is. And so she's dealing with fatigue and just not sure, just something is off. And girls, we know when something is off. And, if you come to Michelle for training, then she's going to get that blood work to at least give you a good foundation as to where to go from there. Now, as a trainer, what are the biggest myths that women believe about strength training at different ages? So, we hear all these things about women and muscle and strength training. So, again, to be specific, what are some of the biggest myths about women and strength training? And because we're talking about iron, we're going to tie it into iron. So, biggest myths, and how could making sure that you're having the right supplementation, your right iron levels, help to alleviate those myths?
Okay. I think one of the number one myths is strength training is going to make me bulky. I'm going to be overly muscular. And so a lot of women are afraid to pick up a weight. I think that myth's kind of changing. Things have really changed in how women view weight training since the early days when I started training. And but that still is out there. You'll still hear this, and I'm going to get bulky. I'm going to be overly muscular. What women don't realize is we don't have the same amount of testosterone as men. So if we're training naturally, we're not gaining that level of muscle. It's extremely difficult to put on muscle. And the older that we get, the harder that becomes. And so we want to maintain our muscle actually, because that actually improves our longevity and vitality of our life. I would say then the next myth would be cardio is better than weight training for fat loss. No, cardio is an important component. I believe in cardio. I implement that in all of my programs, whether you like it or not. But it is not going to make you burn more fat than weight training. Muscle is important, and weight training is what's going to provide you with that muscle mass. Muscle is more metabolic. So the more lean muscle mass you have, the better your base metabolic rate is, which means you're burning more calories even at rest. So we want to have muscle, ladies. And I had a few clients past couple of years, Apple Watches have become quite a big thing. So as an experiment, they would wear their watches anyways all the time. So I had them keep their watches on following their weight training session. So they'd have an intense weight training session with me, and they would keep the watch on. They would monitor how many calories they had burned during the session. But then afterwards, they would see how many calories they burned afterwards. So something a lot of people don't realize is there's something we call the afterburn effect.
Oh, it's like
that means after you do your weight training session, you continue burning calories. Something you don't do when you do cardio. You get off that treadmill, it stops. But over the next 24 hours of an intense weight training session, you will continue to burn calories. And so they would see this, and the calories that they would burn in the following hour were pretty close to the amount they had burned during the session. So that should motivate you right there to pick up a few weights, right?
I'm motivated, Michelle. Wow. Now, obviously, nutrition is a foundation for all of us in life. And of course, many things, sleep, hydration. There's so many things that we could talk about around that. When women are being healthy in the exercise group, now, I'm actually going to rephrase that question. Do you train women in all stages of life? For instance, maybe a young lady who wants to get the right body composition. Do you weight train pregnant ladies? And then, of course, the perimenopausal, menopausal group. I was going to say merimenopausal. Would that be great if it was I'm going to change it to merimenopausal.
Let's change the way we look at it.
Right?
Maybe we should.
I mean, that because I don't think we should suffer and, when I go, oh my gosh, it's horrific. No. So merimenopausal and menopausal group. And so those are three specific groups of women who generally have different iron needs. So if someone, 18 to 40 comes to you not pregnant, and then someone that's pregnant, do you train pregnant women? And then in the perimenopausal and menopausal group, how do you train those women differently? And how do you look at their iron needs differently?
Excellent questions. Yes, I have trained women across all ages and demographics that we're discussing here today, and just feel really privileged to actually be able to do that. I've trained young women from probably as early as 12, 13 years old.
Right.
So they're quite often coming because they're athletes. They want to perform better at their sport in school. Sometimes it is a young lady who's experiencing already a significant weight gain as she starts to go into those adolescent teen years, and she's quite troubled by that. So we do, work together to help them have a better understanding of nutrition and exercise and how that works for them. And then with these young girls, iron can often be an issue, I find.
Yes.
So quite often, I have actually experienced where I can look at them and go, talk to the mom and say, she needs to get her iron levels checked, because sometimes you can actually see it, pale, dark circles. And each time we're training, they seem to lack energy that maybe they normally had weeks before. And so sure enough, if their iron levels are checked, they are low and they need to supplement. And it's actually such an easy fix. Like, it is something that, typically speaking, I don't want to get off into too much about that, but obviously, as long as there's not an underlying other reason for lack of absorption or GI bleeding or something. So I don't want to get into that. But I mean, generally speaking, in order to feel better. And so I've trained the young girls, and I've trained all the way up into the 80s.
Wow.
And I have pregnant women that I've trained. In fact, there's one young woman that I've trained through 3 of her pregnancies.
Oh, yeah, God bless her.
She's an absolute joy. Each pregnancy, she actually becomes stronger and fitter over the years. It's been incredible watching her from where she started to where she is today, and just how this whole progression of exercise being just such an important part of her life, and how she eats and everything. And back to the iron levels, yes, again, going back to women actually with menopausal symptoms, I have found that is something that can be a significant issue, and that depends on what they're going through as they go through menopause. But there are often a lot of women who go through it, and they experience not your typical menstrual periods that younger women have that say max out at 5 to 7 days. Sometimes these women are going a couple weeks.
Yes.
With no break.
Yes.
And so, of course, you're getting depleted at that point.
Absolutely.
And but I think that can often be overlooked in that demographic. So I do think that that's important to address that. And so when they're talking to me, I'm like, hey, get this checked. And then you just really looking for the signs of something that could be off. They seem more fatigued than usual. They're a little paler in the skin. Losing your hair, brittle nails, shortness of breath, or exercise intolerance, where they had been exercising and all of a sudden they're finding themselves short of breath, unable to get through a workout. I've had a number of women over the years where, they started off training, they were great, and then all of a sudden, sure enough, they get checked, and sometimes to the degree where they're either requiring at that point iron transfusions, or even had one client that had to have blood transfusions because hers actually got so low.
Right.
So again, just staying on top of that, regular blood work is going to address that.
Yes.
It's quite, that is one thing that we can find out in our blood work, right?
Yes.
I mean, there's so many other issues that we can have that we don't really know.
Yes.
But this is one thing that we can definitely determine very easily, and either that's the cause or rule it out.
Of course. No, that's excellent. And again, Michelle, you talk in just amazing bite sizes that is foundational to the discussion that us girls are having about iron across the stages. And one of the things that you said is we're talking in generalities. I mean, if you have celiac or something else, obviously you're not the woman that we're talking about. But once you go to your primary care practitioner, you get that blood work, we can find it out. So that's why Michelle says it's easy, because go to your primary care practitioner, find out what your iron levels are, and from there, we can make adjustments. Because sometimes, we just chalk up things to, it's age. Oh, you don't even think that it could be your iron levels. Now, I am going to ask you something about the different types of iron, and I don't know if this is a major impact for you when you're training women, but when women get their blood work, and I know that you obviously look at it because it gives you that snapshot as to that woman, do you look at their storage iron, which is the ferritin, and then their free iron? Does that make a difference, the serum versus ferritin levels?
It does make a difference. But unfortunately, most doctors don't test for both unless you
have
ask
to
them.
ask.
Yeah, so you have to go, because typically we're just getting the ferritin levels.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So sometimes it doesn't always give you that full picture. And so it would make a difference, but if one is showing it's okay, they're not digging further. So at that point, you can probably assume that it's okay, but at a certain point, if you still see there's issues that you think are related to that, then it's worth it to go in to your primary caregiver and say, hey, can we do, a little bit deeper dive into this? Yeah.
Yes. No, of course, that is really awesome. And obviously we're talking about iron, and a lot of my valued guests know me as, I've coached and counseled and done many different things, but certainly in integrative medicine, which is both nutraceuticals and pharmaceutical, that marriage, because sometimes we need more one end, sometimes we need more the other end. So we do the best for each woman as an individual, like Michelle says. We look at the whole picture for us. I have come across being in nutraceuticals, just a plethora of different iron out there, and they have so many different things. Some have different fillers, etc. My go-to is an iron that's natural with cofactors. But sometimes if they're natural and they have cofactors, which means things that help you absorb, like vitamin C, B12, etc., glycine, which is so great for the gut. If you have that celiac, it's going to help you with that. Then it's not strong enough to get those iron levels up. But for me, one of the iron, and I'm just going to mention it, that really helps that is FERAPRO. And what is also great about FERAPRO, it has NSF certification, so internationally it's recognized, but it's 3 different levels. So it's 30 milligrams if someone has had to have that transfusion and they go, okay, I couldn't do it. Thank you, Michelle, for having me do this. Most of us ladies, it's a 75 milligram that's going to change that blood level. You redo it in 3 months, and it's incredible because you're actually absorbing it because of the cofactors. And of course, the 150 milligram, it's if you're severely anemic, it's not going to cause the stomach upset and the constipation, because Michelle, probably a lot of your clients, even nutritionally, iron famous for giving us that gastric upset as well as constipation, especially the pregnant ladies.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, of course. So I'm going to go into another question specifically. What are the key signs of low iron, and how can proper nutrition and supplementation prevent fatigue or performance issues? Because I'm gathering that's what you would notice in a woman, is just that fatigue. And that 18 to 40 age group, is that where you would see specifically low iron show up? If she comes to you, she just can't do it?
I have to say, I see it in all across the board, like ages. So I really have seen it in the more women reaching perimenopause too. I've seen it a lot there. But I think that often the women that I'm seeing who are in that perimenopause stage, that this has been something that they have had ongoing. So long before they reached that, this has probably been an issue that they had throughout their life and never were able to really address it. As far as the 18 to 40-year-old, for sure, that this can definitely be a concern. But I would even go younger than that, because I definitely have seen girls younger who are in that preteen to teenage years.
Right.
And so even those girls need to, they need to be cognizant that this can be a problem. And that's going to cause fatigue. That's going to cause brain fog. That's going to make them have difficulty concentrating in school or besides performing in activities such as exercise or sports. So, so I have definitely seen that this is something that we need to address, and it shouldn't be going sort of unnoticed. If you have these kind of symptoms, go to your doctor, get some blood work done. If you're finding yourself lower energy than normal, and finding yourself fatigued or short of breath just going up a couple stairs, then chances are that could be the culprit.
Absolutely. No, that's fantastic. And us ladies, we've been talking, and ladies go back, we've been talking about perimenopause and menopause.
Mm-hmm.
But we also, at our age, ladies, Michelle, you have to check out her Instagram. We're going to put all her contact in the show. At the end of the show, you will see her contact. Check her out. This is what she looks like now. I know. She sent me a picture. I have to tell the ladies this, Michelle, because I think you motivate us on so many levels for health. So I said to Michelle, do you still wear a bikini? And she goes, I only wear a bikini. I go, and then I got a picture. So those Instagram pictures are now, ladies. And the show is called Walk with Wisdom. I have some things that I have to change. And, Michelle has been phenomenal. I have known her for years. And she said, Genevieve, I can help you. And ladies, we may want to go on a walk with Michelle through training, redoing our bodies, the reword that you like, and really rebuilding. Absolutely, doing a rebuild. And so we'll talk about that and just really go through a step of your training, but especially around iron, because you said something again, Michelle. You are just speaking things that you didn't even know were said on the show. Again, Michelle, you say incredible catchphrases, for lack of a better word, as to what us girls have been talking about on Walk with Wisdom, about iron, about perimenopause, about menopause, about iron. And one of the things that you said is, that you've seen that fatigue piece with us girls across the stages.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just 18 to 40. It's the young ladies and then those in menopause.
Mm-hmm.
When I hit menopause, I thought, don't have to worry about iron. It's over, until we did my blood work and ferritin and everything was in the tank, which could explain the fatigue. So
absolutely.
Thank you for really bringing that up. And anything else, really, just from coming from a training perspective and seeing women, the cross-section of us girls, from preteens to menopause, and working with us on our health. Anything else that's come up for you about what we hear out there, but it's not really true?
I think that one of the number one things that I hear is, I don't have time.
Oh, wow.
We all have the same 24 hours in the day, as we're told. But everyone across the ages that we're talking here, we're all busy in our own way with something else, whether you're raising a young family, you're in a career stage, or you're retiring and you're busy with all your hobbies or whatever. But people say they don't have time for exercise. And I'm telling you, if you don't make time now, sooner or later, you will have to make time for something. And that time you make might be for a health issue that you're now spending time, trips back and forth to the doctor's offices and things that potentially could have been avoided. So I encourage everyone, make the time for your health, make that your number one priority. And with your health, that means exercise. your nutrition, your diet, your nutraceuticals, the supplements that you take. If your iron levels are low or you're feeling a certain way, get your blood work done. Get it looked at. Don't wait. You don't need to sit around and suffer and go through life feeling like I don't have the energy or the time to do this. You need to take care of it now because we only have this body. And this is what has to take us through the next decade and the next decade. And what we do now, good or bad, is going to have an impact on the 10 years from now, the 20 years from now. So if you're not taking care of yourself now, that will have an impact. If you take care of yourself now, that will also have an impact in a positive way. And so you will go through, you can go through those senior years, which is what, believe it or not, I'm looking at now.
Yes, of course.
I'm actually considered a senior in some stores. I get the senior discount.
Yeah, me too.
Right? But I like it. It's kind of funny, but I'm like, yay. But you're either going to go through those senior years with that longevity and vitality to do the things that you want to continue doing, or you're going to be the person who continually suffers and slowly deteriorates, not because of necessarily any disease or anything, but because of your lack of doing anything to take care of this body. So that's what I want to say.
I love that, Michelle. And that is an exceptional, powerful point for us to end on. Michelle, you're going to have to come back and join us on Walk with Wisdom because can you believe it? We've already gone through the entire episode and there's so much more to talk about. Ladies, I think we're going to have to go on a training and iron walk with Michelle. I mean, she knows iron. And so we're going to keep that conversation, Michelle. I'll come back to you. We'll talk about training, nutrition, iron, and you heard it here. It's the one body that we have, and taking care of our body in all those levels, getting our blood work, making sure we know where we are, will give us a very, very different experience of life, each one of us. Thank you, Michelle. Michelle Troll.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in. Thank you, ladies. And we will have all her contact information. Thank you for joining us on Walk with Wisdom.